And people throw out really big numbers and they go, hey, I've sold $1 billion. People don't realize what that takes to sell $1 billion. So to give you an idea, in my whole career, I've personally closed about 1,000 homes. That's 400 million. So like when I first started, my average price point was like 185, and today it's like 785. But over 17 years, the average is 400,000. So that's 400 million.
This is the Agent Goldmine, where you'll find real talk, and ambition. We're here to build real businesses and be more than your average agent. We want to know what the killers are actually doing within their businesses, the reality of it. All tactical, no fluff. So we're here to find out. Please share and enjoy.
All right, welcome back to the Agent Goldmine. Today, we are stoked to have Dennis Folk on the show today. This is going to be a great episode for agents out there interested in working with developers. And before we jump in, I got to hit you with some stats about Dennis. He is out of Tacoma, Washington. His niche is working with developers. Why work with 100 sellers if you could work with one? He's been an agent for 17 years. And in the past year alone, he closed with his brokerage, closed 258 with 155 million in sales. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, Shelby.
Dude, we're so excited to jump in, but
first, Dennis, as you know, we have to start it off with a show moment. What's a quick show moment that you have related to real estate?
Yeah. So I'm especially more so in the beginning, but I've always been known for just being on my cell phone way too much. And so on vacations and I'm always on my phone. I've tried to get better at that. But there was a moment, my daughter is now 11. There was a moment when I'm going to say she was like 2. And one of my jobs then was to drop her off at daycare. And I remember I was, of course, on the phone the entire time. And this particular day was really hot for the Northwest. It was like in the 90s, even though it was pretty early in the morning. And so anyway, I'm on the phone and she's in her backseat, like strapped in. And then I get out of my car and I'm pacing around the daycare person's driveway, just trying to wrap this call up. And I was like, man, it's pretty hot out here. And so I was like, I finally get off the call and I go to open the door and it's locked. And I'd accidentally locked my daughter in the car. And so all these things start floating through my head, like my wife is going to kill me. The fire department's going to have to come. So believe it or not, I think I had actually, when I was on the phone, unstrapped or at least unbuckled part of her and just left her in there. So at like 2, it took me like 15 minutes. So I was able to coach her to like climb up to the front and hit the right button to like unlock it. And I was just panicking because it was really hot out. You hear all these horror stories. And I was like, someone's going to pull up. I'm going to look like the worst parent ever, all because I was on my cell phone. So, but that something like that happened, or at least back then it seemingly like once a month, or like I'd almost cause a car accident, like being on my phone.
Glad that you had survived and your dog. Yeah.
That could have been real bad. Hopefully,
yeah.
How old's your daughter now? Is there a need to call CPS?
Now she's 11. So now she knows better and she'll try to hit the end button on the call, or she'll give me hand signals like, what are you doing? Cut the call.
Or she'll just call like CPS herself.
Yeah, or I'll get right when I get home, she'll go, oh, Dad was on the phone the entire time with so-and-so. And anyway, so now you have to be smarter about it.
So take us to your journey up until right before real estate. What got you into real estate?
So my family was in the business. So I learned to drive, for example, at a new home community that was empty with maybe homes under construction. So I learned how to drive a stick shift in empty neighborhoods where my dad was selling the properties. Since my family was in the business, my family was home builders. They owned a lot of rental properties. And so I knew early on I wasn't going to go to college because just school wasn't my thing. And I knew I was likely to go into real estate. And I remember in the beginning, I broke them this news at age 18. I was like, hey, I want to get into real estate. And they're like, no, they're like, you're too young. It doesn't work like that. And so they actually they wanted me to go sell gym memberships. And hey, I got a guy, here's his card. He'll hire you to sell gym memberships. They wanted me to get sales experience before I showed up at the office and just started working. But I didn't listen to them. And I was 19 in 2006. So then I just showed up basically and was like, I'm ready to work. So my family was in it and it was something I was pretty comfortable with. And, I kind of grew up with it. So.
Dude, I think that's actually a genius idea on your family to go somewhere where you can get high rep number of sales conversations in and just cut the learning curve. But I mean, dude, it totally worked out in the end. So at 19, you got licensed and then you're You've been in the business for 17 years. So did you jump right into the working with developers, or how did that process work?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was so young and inexperienced. At first off, I would do anything. Like I said yes to everything. It didn't matter what it was. Like I would sell a doghouse like 300 miles away. It didn't matter to me. But I went around to some of the bigger, I'm sure everybody calls them this, but listing agents and said, hey, I would like to, or home builders, and said, I would like to sit at your model homes. We call that being a site agent. And a lot of them in the beginning are like, no, like you're too young. You don't have any experience. Like, we don't need you. But some did give me a chance. And so that was where I first started out, probably right out of the gate, was sitting new homes for home builders at new home communities. So I working out of a model home. And at that time, because I was so young and inexperienced, like I would be assigned the communities that nobody else wanted. So they would be like in the middle of nowhere, no sales. And this was also at a time where the market was starting to rapidly decline. And so it was really bad. Like you knew some of the contractors may not be getting paid. And I remember at one community in particular, I wondered at one point if like the bank was going to take the model home back. Like it got really bad. But so yeah, the first 1 to 4 years, I probably did 1,000 open houses. I did a lot of open houses and almost all of them were at new home communities.
That's so many reps. And I love that you said that you would do whatever it took, because that sense of urgency, I feel like from my experience is lacking. And when I see in almost all agents starting out, they just don't have that, I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed. And then they wonder why they fail. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. If I thought a flyer box may be empty or low on flyers, like I would have driven to the model home at midnight. It would, everything was important to me, and it still is, but it was my reputation. It was my work ethic. I wanted to prove that they did not make a mistake in letting me sit there.
And something that I think is interesting. So you're working for the first 4 years. You said you probably did 1,000 open houses, but talking about your niche now, it's working with the developer to sell all of the houses. So it's not like you did the open house and built your business off of the foot traffic. And I mean, I'm sure you did in a way, but Can you talk about how you shifted from open houses into being the developer dude?
Yeah, 100%. So during that time frame, it didn't take me too long to figure out that I was on the wrong end of it. So some people are really happy and they will work their entire career, make a really good living working out of that model home. And they love it because they can say, hey, in front of me, I have 10 lots, or I have 70 lots, or I have 500 lots in front of me. And they're very content with that. I was so antsy and like ADD, it drove me nuts sitting in there. I didn't like it. It was like I was stuck. But what I figured out was I was on the wrong end of it, because the person who had the listings, he may have had like 4 or 5 of me sitting different communities. So where was he or she? I don't know, like on the golf course, but they weren't at that model home. I was. So I realized that this is not a bad thing, but I realized I was being used for leverage, and that like this person has 4 or 5 of these model homes around, and they have 4 or 5 agents working all weekend or all week long for them. And they're the ones really benefiting, because they can show up to the office on Monday morning and have 4 or 5 purchase and sell agreements like ready to submit over to the builders. So that's where it started to dawn on me. I was like, man, I'm glad to be working hard and have this, but I have to figure out a way to flip the script. How do I get on the other end of this? Because I don't want to sit at this model home my whole career.
It's almost that, I don't know, like being a rookie, like on a team or something like that, where I don't want to say hazing, but there's a hierarchy to like getting to the next level. At what point can you level up? Do you even, not you, but do people even deserve to level up? Have you worked hard enough to be able to level up? And a lot of people think because they see Selling Sunset and like other people that are like successful and on the golf course or at home with their kids, whatever they want to do, whatever they're doing, that's what they feel like they should start out with. Therefore, they think, they don't want to work at locations that are far away. They don't want to drive at midnight to restock flyers like you were doing. It's you have to go through this quote unquote like hazing in order to then just step up and then leverage, like you said, because in the beginning you are leverage. So yeah, how did you make that switch into working with developers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll walk you through it. But yeah, back to what you said, I think it is really important for people to have like a grasp on the numbers, because I listen to podcasts and me and Shelby listen to people talk in person, and people throw out really big numbers and they go, hey, I've sold $1 billion. Shelby interviewed the other day a gentleman named Bill Soul, and he was like, I've sold $1 billion. People don't realize what that takes to sell $1 billion. So to give you an idea, in my whole career, I've personally closed about 1,000 homes. I shouldn't say only, that's 400 million. I'm not even half of what Bill's done. So like when I first started, my average price point was like 185, and today it's like 785. But over 17 years, the average is 400,000. So that's 400 million. So there's people don't understand, but that's, you are where you are with your price point. But yes, so what I figured out back then was, the biggest ballers at the office. So if our office had 180 brokers at it, the top 5, let's say 4 out of the top 5, you'd walk into their office and plastered over the wall was these plat maps. And they would have like a green tack for available, or a yellow tack for pending, or a red tack for sold. That's how you knew they were a baller. When they had the more plat maps, the bigger the baller. And so, they were doing okay if they had 1 plat map. If they had 10, you're like, this guy's the like, how is he doing this? And they were always walking in and out of the office with a plat map rolled up underneath their arm. And I was like, how is this happening? Like, where are they, what's going on here? What I figured out was, it didn't take me long just by hanging out with these guys and picking their brain, that if you could track down the land, right? If you could find the land and coordinate the sale from that developer to the builder, 8 out of 10 times, the builder would give you the listings as like a reward for bringing him the lots. And you can ask the builder ahead of time and say, hey, if I bring you lots, will you give me the listings when you build the homes? And we're, where we're at here in Washington, 8 out of 10 times they're going to do that, especially if it's a regional home builder, not a public home builder. So I was like, that's where it's at. I have to start getting more well-versed in land. I have to feed these builders what they need. Because if you're not giving what they need, they don't need you either. So that's where it started to kind of turn on me. I was like, okay, how do I find the land? I got to get land and bring it to them.
I love what you just said about how you identified the indicators that someone was a baller. You said plat maps equal ballers. And then you were like, I want to hang out with those people, to be like those people. And I feel like that's so powerful too, where if you want to elevate, you look around at who you're currently hanging out with. And if it's not who you want to be like, you have to change your group. And it goes back to that thing, everyone says it, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So super cool that you just took that future into your own hands. And can you walk us through, you said I identified that I had to find the land. So can you walk us through that piece?
Yeah, totally. A lot of it was what you kind of hinted at, was so I would immerse myself in it. If someone's like, hey, I'm going to walk some dirt, I'd be like, well, can I come? I'll buy lunch. Can I go? Are you sure it's just dirt? And I want to come. And so, I found it really exciting because I would learn about the construction process of the development side, like the curb, gutter, the sidewalk, the mailboxes, the storm ponds, the light posts, the entrance monument. Where does this come from? Who designs this? What's the process? How does this happen? And most importantly, who owns it? And is it sold? And so I would do a lot of tagging along. And then from there, really, it was just sort of having some guts to say, I sort of mentioned this earlier, that we're on a previous podcast, but we're all driving around all day long, right? We're in real estate, we're going to appointments, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I would spot land. And I would be like, man, here's land, or I see some bulldozers, or I see some gas going in or water going in, or I see the power going in. And I would stop and write down that address. And when I got back to my office, I would research it. And it would take time. You'd get better at using the systems in terms of tracking down who owns an LLC. And with where we're at, we can do a pretty good job at researching the permitting process and finding out who submitted this permit, who's the applicant, when did they submit it, is it expired? Is their permit still good? And so if I could get contact information, I would call them, and I would say, or call or email or whatever. And I would say, hey, are these lots sold? Right. And they would say yes or no, or if you can get a hold of them. And I would say, okay, great. If they're not sold, can I bring you an offer? And I would say, and by the way, I'm not asking for a commission on the land. We make our money selling homes. So I'm not going to burden you or muddy the water with a commission on your land. You having me in the middle is not going to have a negative impact on you. And then I would try to get a price out of them. A lot of times they were reluctant to throw any price out, but that's okay. And so if I could just track that land down, and then I would flip to the other side and find home builders and say, hey, I have some land in this general area. Like, is this of interest to you? And if I brought it to you, would you give me the listings if you closed on these lots? And so kind of just connecting those dots, like finding the landowners, finding out if they're under contract, and if they're not under contract, would you look at an offer if I brought you one? And then finding a suitable buyer and going from there.
That is a lot of work that a lot of agents don't want to do up front, because it's a lot of variables, a lot of maybes. With the land that you're looking at, are you looking at land that was already listed, or are you going off market and like pretty much bird dogging?
Thank you for listening. Out of respect for your time, we want to make this show as valuable as possible for you. So if you have any feedback on how we can improve, please let us know. DM us at Ali the Agent and The Shelby Show.
So almost all of it would be off market. And this isn't always true, but we always had sort of a saying that if building lots or a development piece hit the market, it was garbage, because it will make the rounds. Like these public home builders, especially, their land acquisition people are very good. They're extremely good at what they do. So they can track down the land. Like generally, and there's probably like what we call dirt dogs. There's probably quite a few dirt dogs like myself, like tracking this land down. So if it gets to the point where that developer is like nobody's come asking about it, like I'm just going to have to list it. So it doesn't mean that it's not good at that point or that you still couldn't make something happen. Like I wrote an offer this morning on some lots that are listed, but generally if it hit the market, like they couldn't get their price off market. And like almost all building lots are going to be sold off market.
And then, so once you have the information, you realize that this could be a good deal that a developer would like. When you're talking to the developer, do you have a contract with them, or is it like good faith where they just say, oh yeah, we'll use you as a listing agent, and then you just hope that they do?
So developer and builder are typically two different things. So the developer is someone that buys raw land, like it could be a farm or a forest or whatever, and they turn that raw land into building lots, and then they sell it to what's called then a home builder. So that home builder just buys finished building lots and builds the homes with like sticks and bricks and gets that done. Sometimes they are one and the same, and that's okay too. But would I have something signed with them? No, the developer would never sign something with us saying, I'll give you any exclusive rights to do. A lot of times they'll go, hey, like I'm not desperate. I'm hoping for about this price. If you bring me an offer, I'll look at it. And that's about the end of the conversation. So then if I bring them a suitable offer, I'll bring it to their office or email it over to them. But no, they definitely, in almost all circumstances, would not really sign anything with us until you get to the point of a purchase and sale agreement.
So if I were going to try to start this today, would you, and hypothetically, I've done 4 years of open houses and I have, I'm not a brand new agent, right? So you mentioned this, step one, kind of driving for dollars, researching the land, finding the builders. Would you start by trying to get in with builders and identify what they want to look for? Or how would you even know what land is a good piece of land to dig more into?
That's a really good question. I think with me, I more started with trying to find the dirt. And then from there, being able to determine I had something of value that made me feel more important when I went and talked to the builder. And yeah, I think if it was you, I would probably try to start with the dirt. And the funny thing is, once you sort of started to immerse yourself and put together enough deals over a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year span, you really got to know a lot of the permitting people and the engineers in the industry and the developers themselves and the construction companies. And so you started to make a lot of contacts. And before you know it, a lot of it came by way of not driving for dollars anymore. You just knew the people and you would email like the engineer, like, hey, what projects are you working on? But yeah, I think I would probably start. I know that might be easier said than done, but I like to feel like I had something of value when I went to talk to the builder.
So what kind of systems or like tools do you use as you're going through this process?
The funny thing is, someone should probably have a really robust CRM system. Our office does use Follow Up Boss. I, truth be told, have only logged into Follow Up Boss a couple of times and don't use it. I use this, probably at this point, fairly old school system, but it's called Dropbox. And I just use Dropbox. I have it on my phone. I have it on my computer at home. I can access it from the internet anywhere, my computer at the office. So I organize all the plats or potential projects within Dropbox and add things or update the file as needed. And I love it because I can pull it up anywhere and I'm very fluent in Dropbox.
Oh, well, actually, if you could elaborate, Dennis, that would be great. More systems and tools.
Yeah, you bet. I wish there was a way I could almost, let's see. Okay, is this looking right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this one's called Plats. So these are all potential projects that I've researched over the past few years or so. So let's go into one, for example, called LaBelle. And these are documents I was able to track down. That's a really big file, it must be. So this is a townhome project. And so this gives you a potential site layout.
And you
so
said these are stuff you track. Okay, so hypothetically, you're driving for dollars and you see the land, and then what do you do from there? You see a piece of land, there's no for sale sign. You're just like, oh, I think this would be good. Like, how do you even find, I don't know. Can you take us through it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps on mine. I think step one is probably tracking down the owner, right? So number one, actually, I should take that back. Number one, I'm going to make sure the property is not actively on the market because that's like a big no-no. So number two, once I determine it's not on the market, I'm going to track down who owns it. Okay, so I'm going to establish who owns it. Typically, it's going to be held in an LLC. So with us on our end, you go to the Washington State Secretary of State's website and you can pull up the documents of formation and then determine, you then have contact information for usually them. Sometimes it's through an attorney. Okay, so who owns it? A lot of times I already know them. And then from there, I'm going to go on to our online permitting system. If it's in our main county, I know it very well like the back of my hand. It's a great online system. If it's outside of our county or in a city jurisdiction, it can get a little trickier. But ideally, I can track down when did you start platting this process, if you started platting this process, and how far along are you? Because that land has a different value to a home builder or any buyer at completely raw land or a preliminary plat or a preliminary plat with the engineering approved, or the last step, which is completed building lots. So I want to determine where they're at. So then what I'm going to do, let's say it's a totally finished lot. I stumbled across lots that are like totally finished. Like it is permit ready. You could submit a building permit on it today. Typically from there, I'm going to run some comps. So what other new homes are selling in this area? Home builders are going to aim for a lot price that is 25% of their finished home value. Okay. So I'm going to have in my head, if there's 25 lots here, you can start to do the math to go, if someone can pay per lot 25% of the finished home value, right? What do I generally think this plat's worth? So I'm going to kind of get a number in my head, and then I'm going to make contact with the developer. I'm going to say, hey, have you sold these? If not, could I bring you an offer? Do you have a price in mind? And let's see what he says. He might ignore me. He might say, I'm under contract, or you can bring me a backup offer. He might say, here's my price, bring me an offer. And by the way, I've already talked to these 2 or 3 builders. Like, don't waste your time working with them. So then at that point, I'm going to define who I think is probably the most likely buyer to, hopefully someone we're already working with. But then I would start to determine, okay, which buyer is the best one for me to send this to? And I would send them the project and say, hey, here's the lots. Here's your comps. Did the developer state an asking price or did they not? Here's what I think they're worth. Because the builder's really going to value that. If the developer says, I want 190 a lot, and I'll go, hey, he wants 190. I really think they're closer to 170. I don't care if you pay 190. But I think they pencil out closer to 170. So they like it when you do a little bit of that research. But that kind of break down that process a little bit.
Oh my gosh. That was so helpful. I took notes on all of that. Dude, the thing that you consistently say, like time and time again throughout your whole story, is like the amount of effort you put in to get what you want. Like even in this, just like typing that, like you are going the extra effort to come up with the plan in advance and not just pass them something that they have to do, the thinking they have to figure out. Because no one wants that. That was what?
That was like an amateur where you just like forward them an email and say, oh, let me know what you think. And you also don't want to overcomplicate it because they probably are better versed at that land than I am. More often than not. Like they're going to run their own numbers on utility hookups, on permitting fees. So you don't want to like overdo it, but you do want to give them some baseline info because our specialty is the real estate side. Here's what's selling. Here's your comps. Here's the absorption rate. Could be kind of important. Like how fast are these homes selling? So if there's 40 lots, how fast can we expect to sell out? Are we going to sell 1 a month? Are we going to sell 4 a month? Is it 2 a month? They're looking like, what's your specialty in the situation? And, so give them kind of some baseline parameters, but don't overwhelm them.
Ugh, that was really okay. Like hypothetically, you send it and you find the perfect buyer, which it would be the builder. I was kind of confused on that. So you get in contact with the developer. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Wonderful question. So what I meant by more ideal buyers, what builders build the product that would sell in that area, and what builders are already in that area. So like if we have a builder, for example, they're only working first-time home buyer product in startup communities. Like let's say Shelby, you would know like around Joint Base Lewis McCourt. If their specialty is like first-time buyer product, like very dummied down, like cheap and expensive stuff. And let's say these lots are higher end, like the ones I was working on this morning. You're not going to send them to the guy that only builds super duper cheap stuff, right? You want to send them to somebody that has the building plans and the wherewithal to build upper end product. So you kind of start, because you don't want to waste your time shooting at the builders that like have no business looking at it. So you start to define that portion, and then who do we like to work with? Like who treats us the best, who's the fairest on commissions, who is knows our systems the best or works with our office the best. So yeah, and there's been times too where I've learned from mistakes where I used to gather this information and shoot it out 4 builders at once, just thinking, hopefully one of them takes it. But it happened one time, this is probably 10 years ago, where both builders are like, I want these lots now, write them up. Then now I have a problem because I can't write them up for 2 people. And so I had to go back to him and say, hey, look, I'm really sorry. I should have told you just before, but I sent them to multiple builders at once. And I have to pick one. I'm not picking you. And in that situation, the builder got really pissed off at me, and he actually got the lots. He had someone else write them up and he beat us out. And so, and I'm still on good terms with both of them. It took a while to correct the relationship with the other guy. But so yeah, I'm pretty careful now. I don't like to shotgun them out. I like to be a bit more strategic with it.
It makes sense. And okay, so at this point in the process, you already told us that you're not getting commission in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm listening, and I'm a listing agent, and I'm like, holy shit, they haven't even begun building, and now I have to wait for how long? Like, what is this? What does this next part look like? Yo, real quick, this podcast is not free. Cost of admission is sharing with a buddy who'd benefit or throwing it on your Instagram story. Tag us, we'll reshare that.
It's not always we don't ask for a commission. If it's a builder we're unsure or have a feeling we're not going to get the listings, because sometimes that happens, right? Then we put a commission in. If we're like, hey, if this is our only transaction having to do with this project, like let's put a 3% commission or whatever in. Sometimes the developer will encourage you. He's like, hey, I don't care. Like, throw your commission in there. Like, if I get my number, I get my number. So, but probably 15, 20% of the time we're asking for a commission on those. And yeah, so that's a great point, Shelby. When they buy it, depending on the phase, like you're a ways out. I mean, best case scenario, you might be putting homes up for sale in 6 months. And the worst case scenario, it could be 3 years. But that's the goal, is to sell these builders projects and you start to build your pipeline over time. And then we really make our money, obviously, when they start building those homes. You can get some real pipelines built out in front of you and get those model homes up and running, get them staffed, and then get them off to the races.
Got it. Okay. So best case 6 months, worst case 3 years. And during this process, you wrote a listing agreement upon the first closing for 3 years from now, or?
No, they wouldn't sign a listing agreement at that point. Usually we do have, once we get close enough, we'll sign what's called an LOA, or letter of authorization, that allows us to start marketing the community and putting up signage and stuff like that. But there's definitely some faith involved. When you sell them that project, they're actually going to do what they said and use you. And it has happened before multiple times where the builder didn't end up using us. You would drive by the project and what? Another agent signs her up? That really stings. I brought you this project. So, and I think that's eliminated as you become more established and they respect what you do more. And that builder that did that, luckily we did get a commission because the developer was a client of ours too, but we still work with them. And we don't have any active projects with them now, but we met with them the fall, and we still bring them land on a regular basis. So we don't burn that bridge, unless they've just totally demonstrated that they just are really bad people. But, I think a lot of them deserve a second chance. A lot of them have large staffs. They have a lot of people in their ears. They have a lot of relationships with different brokers. So, but yeah, it's definitely a leap of faith that they will back that up.
Okay. Makes sense. So how about, can you talk us through, if you're listing how many homes is in a development, hypothetically?
A lot of times it can be, between 5 and 9. And on the larger end of the ones we do, they're going to be like 70, 80 lots.
Okay, gotcha. So you, in a great world, 80 listings coming your way. Is this a standard 3%? Or like, I know you're not really supposed to talk about commission, but can you give us like a ballpark of what that looks like?
Absolutely. So I'm very transparent. I don't know who doesn't talk about commissions, but I don't mind talking about them. Home builders do not pay full commissions for the most part. We have some smaller ones that will, but typically that commission is going to be more like 4.5, sometimes depending on the volume you're doing, even closer to 4. And a lot of times you're incentivized to bring what's called in-house deals. So that means to where the buyer does not have their own agent. So we strive for like a 40% in-house rate in the model home. On really good years, we're closer to 60%. So our site agent could make, let's say, anywhere between $2,000 and $12,000 per deal, right? And the same thing goes for us. It just depends on the price point, depends on the volume you're doing. But let's say that agent was going to make $7,000 if the person has an agent. But if that person doesn't have an agent, maybe theirs goes to like 11 or 12. So then if they can pop 4 of those a month for the next year and a half or whatever, they're extremely happy people. I mean, I would hope so, but
oh my God.
Yeah, so it can vary. It's very, almost no builder is going to pay a 6% commission. And if they are, they're a really small builder that would only do a couple a year.
I love how you just were like, yeah, our side agents, because if we rewind in the beginning, you were that side agent and now you're like hair flip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freaking.
Sometimes I still fill in. I'm filling in at one this coming weekend. So I'm going to find out if I still got it. I probably look like a dork out there, but
yeah, you'll be a scrub. No one will buy from you. No, just kidding. Dude, you mentioned that, you're incentivized if you bring the in-house deals. Is this where your golden nugget comes in for the signs? What is it? Can you tell us about your golden nugget?
Oh, I'm sorry. How we accomplish that?
Yes, because I believe you were talking about how you put out all those signs overnight, but it's not you, to bring in the business to get the in-house deals. Is that correct?
No, that would help us that wouldn't really correlate with in-house deals necessarily. I mean, it could help, but that's just a part of the overall larger marketing piece for new home communities. But how we do it is pretty strategic, that when folks come into the model home or before they show up, they have to register, right? They have to sign in and they say like, I'm Shelly Osborne. Do you have an agent? Yes or no? Why are you moving? What's your contact information? So in order for the broker to receive a commission, they have to do one of 3 things: be there on the initial visit with their buyer, register their buyer ahead of time online, or I think the third thing is make the appointment for your buyer. Basically, the buyer's agent has to be there on day one. Because what happens on our end is buyers will go out by themselves and look at new homes and get like halfway into a contract, like, oh, oops, my cousin's an agent. Can I put his name here? Like, no, your cousin cannot parachute in at the last minute. They have to be there working like a real broker. Okay. So we don't actively try to axe out the other broker, but we're going to clarify whether your broker is actually a broker or whether, they're not your broker. And so a lot of people are going to come in naturally, like, hey, I don't have an agent. Like, I got all the info I need. Like, but a lot of them, there's that gray area to where you're going to say, hey, if you have an agent, great. We are going to work with them. We're very agent friendly. But if you don't, we're going to clarify up front that you don't. And, you're going to get A+ service. So yeah, a lot of that's just defining, and because you have to put rules in place, because we have a lot of brokers and they will definitely try to parachute in. Even after you've gone under contract, they can try to parachute in, like, you tried to steal my buyer. Well, I don't know. They've been to the model home 9 times without you. So we didn't steal it.
So, I mean, I'd be parachuting in there. I'd be like, my cousin, my mom, man, I was here all along.
Well, I think too, it goes for, agents working with a lot of buyers, that you should, to the best that you can, be with your buyer. Go with them. Even if they don't necessarily express an interest in you coming, try to actively be a part of their home search process. Be an advocate for them. Be a resource for them. So I think that's a lesson for the brokers too, is that you don't be lazy on the weekend. Just go, call me if you want to write something up. Go hit up all the open houses. Go with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Dennis, that's a lot of work.
Too much.
Another big work. Yeah, that's something that I tell new agents to make sure that they clarify with their clients. Like, hey, do not go to any homes without me. I want to be there. I want to be working with you. Because a lot of times clients feel bad. They're like, oh, I don't want to hit my agent up again when it's on the fly on a Sunday when they see that Lennar Homes has an open house and they want to go check it out. And therefore, that one time when, they're like, they walk into a model home or whatever it is, right outside, there's usually a QR code that says, hey, to get inside the house, which you've already driven all the way over here, you've taken time out of your weekend or whatever day it is. Now, all you have to do just to go inside the house is just fill out this information. What's your agent's phone number? What's your agent's email? And that's another point of friction where if the buyer is on a short, maybe time frame, they have plans later on that day, they don't want to fill it out. So they're just like, no, I don't. I just want to get in the house. That's the whole point. And so that's something like very specific that we have to tell buyers, agents, because I actually am on the other side of this where I'm like, hey, we've been working with, you have to let us know when you are going to visit new builds, any builds. Like, we are here for you. That's literally our job. And it's hard to like sometimes get in the middle of that and say, no, prove like, hey, this is, the buyer broker and et cetera. So it's interesting to see the other side of things. I actually just purchased a model home. I just moved in here and it was, I was a buyer, I'm the agent, and I had to fight and be like, hey, no, I am going to get paid on this commission. I'm a realtor. Yeah. And it's I feel like it's another world working with new builds.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a good point that I think agents should sort of counsel their buyers on. In the event you attend an open house without me, particularly like a new home community, here's what you need to do. Okay, you give them those steps, and I think you coach them in advance. But you brought up some good points with like Lennar, for example, and I know in Arizona it's getting really popular as self-guided tours. So that makes it really easy for the buyer to like, shoot, do I even need? I don't need my broker. I can let myself in. And believe it or not, I don't know if it's the case outside of Washington. If it's a home they're selling that is not completed yet, they don't pay a commission. So they went to 0% commission for the buyer's agent, believe it or not. So crazy. We don't do that. We offer lots of commission.
Wow, they're at 3%.
But they went to 0%. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. I have one more thing before we shift into kind of the wrap up mode. But I remember, when I was working more as a buyer's agent and I would see all the new construction and I'd be like, those agents have it so easy. They don't have to do anything. People just walk in and they don't have to work for their money. But before you mentioned an overall marketing strategy. So I think my assumptions back in the day were wrong. And I would love to hear what you guys do in order to market the listings that you guys do get.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the marketing is going to vary on a couple of different things. How big is the builder? Do they have the working capital or do they have the in-house marketing team, right? So how big are they and how much help do they need? If it's a really big builder, a lot of times they're going to say, hey, don't even touch our marketing. We're doing 100% of the marketing. By the time your team shows up on site, everything will be ready. On the other end of it, you can get maybe a newer regional home builder or a medium to somewhat smaller size regional home builder, and they need help with everything. So you are doing all the lot signs, you are doing the parking signs, you are doing the flags at the entrance, you are doing all the flyers, all the floor plan flyers, potentially the 3D renderings for the homes, the floor plans, offsite signage, weekend bootleg. So there is some communities where, and that's going to vary, right? You have to calculate what you're going to spend. Like, what's our absorption rate? Where's our profit at on this project at the end of it? How much can we spend? And so, but yeah, there's some projects where it wouldn't be crazy to spend 30 or 35,000, getting a plat up and running before you've put anything on the market. And that's a risk too. And so there's a lot of projects where you might get to closing 4, 5, or 6 and just get to the point where you're really breaking even, and then your money from there on out. But yeah, so there's a ton of marketing involved and a lot of ongoing marketing. And those agents that sit those homes, they're there all weekend. So people forget they don't have a life on the weekend. They're there, probably 5 or 6 days a week.
Dude, really good insight too, because that's just like one of those reoccurring factors in life. Is like whenever you're like, oh, it's so easy. Like it never is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that happens to me every freaking day where I'm like, oh, I'll just set up this landing page. It'll take 2 seconds. 4 hours later. Like nothing is ever as easy as it seems. And Dennis, you mentioned the weekend bootleggers, which is your golden nugget that you have uploaded into theagentgoldmine.com. So could you really quickly explain what that is and how you use it?
Absolutely. So I remember for a while, there was a time where I would and I don't know if every region is like this, but I would drive around on the weekend and be like, man, how are these guys doing it? Who puts up all these signs? There are these little, we call them bootleg signs that say turn left or turn right, or here's the community, or go this direction, turn around. But they're always in on the side of the road, in a bank, in the banks, parking, at the planter strip, or at Walmart, or all these areas. I'm there's no way, who would put these signs up? Who'd be that stupid? They're going to get taken right away. And I started to realize, or someone gave me the insight, that it's a company you hire they go around these vans and they pound them in for you on a Friday night. So before your weekend open houses, and they take them down for you on a Sunday night, and they reuse the same signs over and over. And so that's a part of our marketing too. And it just depends on, we don't do it all the time, but it's certainly a tool in our toolbox that we will have. A lot of times for a particular project, we might run it for 60 or 90 days. It might be 60 to 75 signs on every foreseeable entrance or intersection heading towards that community for maybe a 2 or 3 mile radius. And it's really not that much. You can set a budget with those companies and say, hey, I'm going to get these signs made up. I don't want to exhaust $8,000 on this project. So, and they'll go, okay, well, based on that, I can get you 50 signs per weekend for 90 days. Is that cool? And I'll go, let's do it. And at the end of it, I might choose to extend that, keep going, or add to the route. But yeah, so that's one thing I wondered for a while. I was who is putting out all these signs? They're going to get taken down, but they don't care because people aren't at those businesses on the weekends. Nobody's at the bank on the weekend, or nobody's, and code enforcement isn't out, because you're not allowed here to have signs up in those areas. But code enforcement doesn't work on a weekend, so the signs just stay up. Anyway, yeah, that's what I uploaded there to the Goldmine.
Yes, love the leverage, which is normally one of our questions. But I'm curious about what the future looks like for you. Because before we hit record, you were talking about attraction, your brokerage. And so when you look ahead, what does that look like?
Apple listeners, this short pause is to ask you for a review. Here's how to do it. Back out of the specific episode, go to the page where you see all the episodes, scroll down, keep scrolling. Perfect. Now tap those 5 stars. Thank you so much. Back to the show.
Yeah, so in February of 2021, prior to that, we were a team at a larger brokerage. We were usually between 8 and 12 people. And at that point in time, it was really December of 2020, but we got finalized in February of 21. I decided to start our own brokerage. And it was why are we at this other brokerage? This doesn't make any sense. And we kept having brokers come to us hey, we want to work with you. But we would only take them on an as need basis. Hey, I don't have a model home for you to sit at, so you really don't need to come to our team. But I really enjoyed helping people. But it got me thinking. I was man, I think we might be better off, or it might be long past due to start our own brokerage. So that's what we did in February of 2021. And then I really discovered that I was extremely competitive with and pretty passionate about recruiting. I really love recruiting. So then we started with I thought it was 8. I guess it was closer to 12. And now we're at about 70. That was 2.5 years ago. And so I really love recruiting. So that has been a lot of fun, and we're going to keep growing and keep recruiting. I really want to get to the point where we're at about $500 million in annual sales. And ideally with me selling pretty much none of those on my own. That's our goal for the next, let's say, 3 to 6 years.
That's amazing. Dude, you've grown really fast. What do you attribute the fast growth to?
Well, I did so many transactions, and I still do, but I had relationships with a ton of the brokers in our area. And a lot of times people remember you if you're pretty consistent and you're professional and you're friendly, and how you treat them when a transaction doesn't go well. They remember those things. But ours was, we don't charge near as much as the really large brokerages in the area, or most of the nationwide brokerages. So we still have to charge something, but we consider ourselves pretty affordable. And then we also try to offer people just as much, and sometimes quite a bit more than they're currently getting in terms of technology or marketing resources. And so it was really trying to be kind of that hybrid, not charge near as much, offer just as much, if not more. And then a lot of that was just me recruiting, like going through the files, like who have I worked with and who, how did things go with this broker, and just reaching out and constantly making appointments and trying to grow the firm.
As you're reaching out, what are you saying to the agents that you've previously done transactions with?
She knew my question.
A lot of times, it does vary. In the beginning, like the first year, I was so competitive with it, and I really wanted to get us some street cred because it would really piss me off when people would say they'd never heard of our company. So I had like a chip on my shoulder. So in the beginning, I pretty aggressively offered signing bonuses. I think our first year, I paid like $80,000 signing bonuses, anywhere from like maybe $2,000 to $8,000 a pop. So not gigantic, but enough to like get people's attention. But that, and a lot of it too, was just like, like anything else, it was reaching out to people and saying, hey, like, are you happy where you're at? How's it going? Do you need anything from me? Like offering to be very unselfish with your time and helping with any project or, anything they're working on, like without them being here. If they need help on anything, I'll help them even before they come here. But a lot of times you have to create a relationship with these people and hit them up once a month or once every 2 months, but they're not going to come over most of the time until they have a need. If something goes awry at their current brokerage, or they get in like a pissing match with their designated broker, or something goes south, I want them to think of me. Because it usually takes something at their current brokerage happening. They're like, all right, I'm leaving. Like, we're at Dennis. Can we meet tomorrow? But a lot of that wouldn't happen if I hadn't hit them up like 3 or 4 times in the last like 6 months or a year. And it's funny, that recruiting thing sometimes is a long-term game. There's people we already have coming over, one that came over yesterday, and I've been recruiting her for a year and a half. And it was finally, she's like, I think I'm ready. Like, I don't know why I'm paying so much where I'm at. Like, I'm at a lull in my business, so it'd be an easier time to switch. And so I think hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. But
definitely, that's awesome. I'm excited to see your growth. As we head to the wrap-up questions, are there any last parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the group?
No, I can't think of any.
You've shared a lot, so
No.
we super appreciate it.
No problem.
The first question, what is your favorite app or tool that you use in your business?
Man, I don't want to repeat Dropbox because that one, I feel like so many people know about that. I do use an app on my phone quite a bit called Land Glide. I don't know if it's a real estate or hunting app. I think a lot of people, I actually got it from Bigger Pockets, but it's like $10 a year. And that one's really nice because anywhere I'm at, I can just hit the app on my phone and realize who the landowners are, and I click on it and get, when did you buy it? Things like that. So that's Land Glide. That's one I use quite a bit. Yeah, I can't really think of anything. Oh, I do have one more. We have a lot of software at our office, and I'm kind of notorious for not using like 80% of it. But one system I use a lot is our cloud CMA system. That's a really good one that we use. So the people who do our website as Luxury Presence in general, I'm pretty happy with them. But yeah, cloud CMA, I definitely use quite a bit when running CMAs.
I don't know what that is.
So and on our end, when you do a CMA in our MLS, it spits out, a decent looking one, but it's the one that all agents would use. So like when I went on one of my very first listing appointments, I worked really hard on that CMA that our local MLS produces for you, as long as you insert the comps. And I remember I showed up at this guy's house and I was like, I want to sit down with you. I want to go over the CMA. And I took my time going through like every page. And when we were done, he cleared off some paperwork on the side of his like dining room table. And there was 6 of that same CMA. So everybody had shown up with the exact same freaking CMA because we were all part of the same MLS. And so this cloud CMA is just like way doper. It's like an interactive one with an interactive link, and you can shoot it over as a PDF. It inserts the estimated seller net proceeds sheet. It's just way more like, and it's very user friendly, which is important to me. If you use it like twice, you're probably going to have it down. But I use that a lot, and it connects directly to our MLS. So when I run the comps on the MLS for anything, I can just click the button. It automatically like interacts with our cloud CMA and puts it together for you. So, but I wanted something way better that really stood out as opposed to just a standard one our MLS spits out.
I love that you said doper, because now for sure, Noah's the most dope. That is awesome though. Anything to differentiate yourself besides your above and beyond and all that. Dennis, what events are you going to this year?
This year, well, I hung out with Shelby at Real Estate Rockstars. I'm trying to figure out what other events I'm going to this year. I want to get back to Bigger Pockets because I went to their event once. Next year, in 2024, I'll probably go back to Real Estate Rockstars. Other than that, it's just local stuff here. that I'll attend. I don't think I've flown out to any other real conferences.
That's so crazy.
Cool. Well, Ali and I will both see you at Real Estate Rockstars if you go out for next year.
Yeah, and maybe VPCon too. That's so crazy that we were both at Real Estate Rockstars this last year, and like because it's so small and it's so intimate. And I'm like, oh, I met everybody, and I didn't, So.
Well, what I not feel bad about, but I've noticed the last couple of years, like people, you probably really get to know people when you go out afterwards and drinking and like hanging out. That's where you really get to know people.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I take my family with me. And so like right when the day is over, like I zip back to my family and they're at like a resort down the road called Kalahari. So when we have a ton of fun, there's like a water park and there's like an arcade. So, but if that wasn't the case, I probably would get to know people a lot better. And I'd probably do the running in the morning if they were doing. So I feel bad. I'm only there just for the conference and I zip back to the hotel, but.
Got it. Yeah. Dude, well, how can we help you in your business? Like, what is something that you are lacking in that hopefully we can help with?
Well, I can't think of anything in particular. I will say I actually learn a fair amount, and a lot of it's just small tidbits on like a weekly basis from Shelby. So I follow her, and I have for the last 1.5 or 2 years. I saw her on stage and thought, this girl has some freaking guts. She was at the very first Real Estate Rockstars. It was a bigger venue. There was more people. And she is not very big in person. She's, and I was like, this girl's got an attitude. This girl is like kicking ass and taking. I was really impressed with like her investment mindset. And I just gave her a lot of credit for getting on stage in front of everybody. So, but since then I followed her. I like her chippiness. I like her attitude. I like how real she is. But I pick up little nuggets probably once a week, something. And if it's maybe something I'm relaying to one of our brokers or whatever, but I pick up little tidbits all the time from her. So.
You just made me, my heart is just like exploding over here. That was so nice. Thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, okay. Well, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, just Dennis M. Folk. I'm on Twitter at Dennis_Folk, and Folk is FOLK. Those are where I'm hanging out the most. But that's it. Our website's terrafinre.com. I'm not hard to find.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. So that everyone knows now where to find you on social media. If in case you guys don't already follow us, we're Ali the Agent and the Shelby Show on all social media. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, for listening, and for the listeners out there, please be a bro and share this show.
Thanks so much for listening, dude. If you want the golden nugget that this guest provided, see the show notes or just go straight to theagentgoldmine.com. That's where we keep all our resources for you. Till next time.